I've just bought this 11-year-old Mitsubishi Shogun, and in this video I'm just going to show you how I've treated the rust underneath and how I'm giving it a bit of underbody protection. So this is a 2013 Shogun, but it's only done 57,000 miles, so it's incredibly low mileage, which is why I bought it. And I had intended just to treat the tow bar here because this was looking a bit unsightly because it was all rusty. So I've treated the rust and painted this in black hammerite, and that's all I was going to do. But while I was under here, it sort of expanded into a gearbox oil change, differential and transfer box oil change, and now rust treatment as well. So what products am I using? Well, first off, to treat the rust I'm using Bilt Hamber Hydrate-80, and you just paint this on with a paintbrush and it turns the rust to black and gives you a nice sort of primed undercoat, as it were. And then for the cavity filling I'm using Bilt Hamber Dynax-S50, and this comes with a long nozzle with a 360-degree spray on the end, so you can push that down cavities and spray this sort of oily wax substance to protect all the cavities. And then the final product I'm using is Lanoguard, purely for ease of use, because you can just spray this on everywhere, cover cables, rubbers, doesn't matter. This is just very easy to apply. I've got the full kit here, which includes two 2-litre bottles of the spray, a tub of grease, and then the pump nozzles and the bottle here. So a lot of people use this in the UK because they do a lot of marketing. This stuff is all over social media. So Lanoguard say this will treat rust, but all it's doing is covering the rust, and the reason why they say it treats rust is because if you cover it, then the water and oxygen can't get to it, so the rust doesn't spread, but it doesn't treat the rust. So that's why I've gone with Bilt Hamber Hydrate-80 to get rid of as much of the rust as I can, and then covering it in Lanoguard. So let's have a look at what it looks like before I start. So doing this job, the first step is preparation, of course, and preparation is key with everything. So I have thoroughly pressure washed the underside of the vehicle, and I've got a 90-degree lance on the pressure washer, and I really thoroughly went all around this, waving it all different angles to get as much of the dirt off as I could. There was very little dirt came off, mainly because it's been so wet recently, so this has probably had quite a good wash as it's been driven along the roads. So I then put the vehicle on the ramp here in the workshop, and it had a night to dry, and then I went round with the airline, and this got more dirt off than the pressure washer did, and it was amazing how much dirt was still in cavities and was still bone dry. So using a sort of fine point gun like this on the airline has just got an awful amount of dirt off. The worst place, as always, is inside the wheel arch liner lip there, and even though I'd run the pressure washer around that many times, when it was dry I still got my hands in there and I still pulled out an awful lot of dirt. But then running around with the airline, pushing this in all the cavities I could find, I blew out an awful lot more. So in total, even after washing, I think I've had 5 dustpan fulls of dirt out of the chassis in this car. So my first tip is, if you want to do this job, if you've got an airline, just get a gun like this. These only cost about 15 quid or so, and using the compressed air did a much better job than the pressure washing. The vehicle's then also dry, so you can get on with doing the rust treatment straight away. You don't have to wait for it to dry. But this just got an awful lot more dirt out than using the pressure washer. So the next step was to then brush on the Hydrate-80 using a paintbrush. But this is a messy job when you're working underneath. Even though I'm on a lift here, it's still a messy job. So you want to wear a hat, because I got this stuff in my hair and it dries rock solid, so I've had to cut chunks of my hair out, and I got it up my arms, even though I was wearing gloves, and it all sticks to your arm hair. It's horrible stuff, but anyway, it does work incredibly well. So obviously with this you're just brushing on what you can see, but there's a lot of cavities that will have rust inside that you can't access with a paintbrush. So I made up this little device, put some Hydrate-80 in here, and this is just a 1 litre oil bottle. I've drilled a hole here that I can push the airline gun onto, and then got a bit of PVC hose, and then I can push that into cavities, and this will then blow out the Hydrate-80 into the cavities. But it wasn't that successful. I ended up wasting too much of it. It will blow it out into the cavities just fine, but then you've got to catch the product as it pours out, and it was rather wasteful, and this is expensive stuff. So I've got here how big is this bottle? I'm guessing it's 1 or 2 litres. I can't see the size, but anyway, this was, I think, 25 quid, and I've used, I would say I've used 3/4 of it just doing this vehicle. So this Hydrate-80 has now been on, and it's all dried and everything's gone black, and it's a nice smooth primed surface that you can then paint, or in my case cover with Lanoguard. So it is a tricky job, and it's the most awkward job to do, getting under here and getting in any cavity you can find with a paintbrush. And in reality it was a day's work just doing the Hydrate-80. And the worst part under any car is always the exhaust, and I've done all the exhaust as well, because the heat won't affect it, and you can spray this with Lanoguard also. The steps and the step brackets are always the things that corrode the worst on EVs, and they're looking an awful lot better. And I've filled the cavities with the other Bilt Hamber cavity wax product. So yeah, anything that I can get to I've covered in the stuff, and not that I can really see too much here. It's all looking very much better. The actual floor of the vehicle is all rust free. I've just done any exposed bolt heads or any threads, anything I can find. It's all treated, and it's all looking really good. So next step is just to cover it all with the Lanoguard products. So the Lanoguard is just a sort of a waxy spray. It just covers everything, and that's how it works. It just makes everything waterproof, but it doesn't last very long. It only lasts about a year. They also provide a tub of grease, and you can brush this on critical areas, and this is going to hang around much longer. So the first job is to brush on the grease where you can, where you think there's areas where this is going to have an added benefit. Where that might be is within seams of any box sections. So first job is to go round and brush on as much of the grease as you can, and then cover the lot, including the grease, with the Lanoguard spray. Lanoguard products are made with lanolin, which comes from sheep wool, and when you open this grease, straight away you can smell sheep. So it is recommended to warm this up if you want to make it a bit easier to brush on, but I think today that's probably soft enough already. So I did have to warm the grease because applying this is actually more awkward than it looks, but anyway, I think I've done enough. I've done sort of all threads, brake lines, the unions, and then any sort of brake line or water line clips underneath, because they tend to corrode up. But I could have done the whole chassis with this stuff really, and it's probably going to last longer and provide better protection than the Lanoguard spray. But anyway, I'm going to stop there because I can use this on the trailers and for other jobs in the future. So when it comes to spraying the Lanoguard, you get a hand pump here, and you can attach this piece to the nozzle on the end and then drop that into the container and then do that up, and then you can hold that in one hand, hold the spray trigger in the other. So this stuff is very thin and probably very easy to spray too much on. Let's do a real arch liner like that. So applying this is so easy, it's really quick and easy because you can spray this everywhere. So if you've got access under the vehicle, you can do it in 10-15 minutes or so. And when it's applied, it is very wet and glossy looking. As you can see, this is dripping off here, but as it dries it goes matte and it looks like nothing's there. So a few bits had dried and I thought I'd missed them, but I hadn't. So it does change a lot as it dries. Actually, it's dried there. I'm not sure whether the phone is picking that up, but you can see the wet bits and the dry bits. I've done all the exhaust as well. If it gets too hot, then it's only going to burn off. Might smell of sheep a little bit, but it's going to do no harm. So might as well treat it. It depends how hot that gets. Probably the front bit is going to get hotter and that will probably burn off straight away. But anyway, time will tell. But all round the sills there, it's all done. It's just drying there, so that bit looks like it isn't done, but yeah, I've sprayed everything. So a 2 litre bottle is probably enough, or 2 2-litre bottles will be enough if you want to really give it a good second coat. So it's now been about a week since I applied the Lanoguard, and I've got the vehicle back up on the lift here. So let's have a look at what it looks like underneath now. The rust was worse at the rear here, and the Lanoguard finish is a sort of sticky, tacky, greasy or waxy finish. Certain areas like here and here, I've got the Lanoguard grease underneath the Lanoguard coating. So everything is weatherproof, well, for up to a year I suppose, and yeah, it does look better, but only time will tell what this is going to be like in the long run. I did also Lanoguard the whole exhaust system, and that seems fine. When I first used it, clearly some of it did burn off and there was a bit of fumes from it, but not too much. And when the exhaust gets hot, the Lanoguard does soften up, and maybe some of it drips off, but certainly it's tacky here still. That pipe doesn't seem to have any on, so it's melted off that. Obviously that gets much hotter than the outside of that box. Yeah, it's the pipes where it's all melted off, but the brackets are still covered in Lanoguard because obviously they're not going to get so hot. But that's no biggie. If it melts and drips off the hot areas, everything else is all still coated. The floor is all coated, not that that needed it because that wasn't really rusty. But the advantage of this is you just spray it everywhere, so all cables, all moving parts, all rubbers are all just coated with the stuff. The side steps were particularly corroded and are always vulnerable on a 4x4, so hopefully that's delayed the continued corrosion on those. This is all plastic, so that's not treated, but the rest is all looking very good. Well, it's getting a bit dark now, not that you can see the front, and I've got all the covers back on, but let's just show you up under there. So I guess I'll do an update video in a year's time when this will need a second coat, and then I'll look at the long-term benefits of using this Lanoguard. So all the links to the products I've used are in the video description below, including a discount code and any other additional information. And if you found this video useful, please do click the thumbs up because that really does help, and I'll see you on the next video.